Amid major political and economic unrest in the Middle East, Arab Summit opens in Jeddah today. Recent international reports stresses need for increasing climate funds for Yemen and other countries. Expired food supplies spread in Ma'rib, risking the health of thousands of Yemenis. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shazad Dilbay. In Jeddah, the session 32 of the Arab Summit of Renewal and Change started with the participation of leaders of Arab countries and heads of delegations. This report has more details.
The 32nd session of the Arab Summit of Renewal and Change kicked off in Jeddah with the participation of leaders and presidents of Arab countries, and most prominently President Rashid al-Alimi. The Jeddah Summit aims to enhance consultation and coordination among Arab countries regarding efforts to maintain the security and stability of the region and promote Arab interests, especially in light of the successive changes and escalating crises at the international and regional levels. The 32nd session of the Arab Summit is being held in exceptional circumstances that the region and the world are going through in terms of regional and international crises and conflicts, which necessitate the Arab countries to find mechanisms through which they can face common challenges, enhance regional security and stability, and achieve well-being for their countries and peoples, which necessitates the development of political coordination mechanisms under an inclusive umbrella, and strengthening economic and social cooperation to advance development in various fields that directly affect the Arab citizen. Away from politics, the problem of food security that some countries in the region suffer from, especially with the continuation of the Russian-Ukrainian war and its global economic repercussions that cast a shadow on the Arab world, especially with regard to grain and wheat supplies and high energy prices, as well as the problem of water security for both Egypt and Yemen. These files place the responsibility of the Arab Summit on finding mechanisms through which it can face common challenges and support regional security and stability in a way that achieves well-being for its countries and people, as well as developing political coordination mechanisms under the umbrella of the League and strengthening economic cooperation to advance development in various fields that directly affect the Arab citizen.
Arab League resolutions have a long history that dates back to 1964. These conferences have featured long discussions, deliberations, and changes, with some having long-lasting influence on Arab collective action. This report has more details.
Arab League presidents have convened 46 summits over the last 8 decades, comprising 31 regular and 15 emergency sessions, as well as 4 Arab Economic Development Summits. These conferences have featured prolonged discussions, deliberations, and changes, with some having a long-lasting influence on Arab collective action and others having faded from Arab consciousness. The Cairo Summit of 1964 is said to have been one of the most influential Arab summits in shaping the Arab landscape. At that time, unprecedented Arab-Arab conflict prevailed. There was Arab resentment against the Iraqi regime policy seeking to annex Kuwait, as well as tensions between Egypt and Syria following their separation in 1961. Furthermore, Egyptian-Saudi tensions arose against the backdrop of Yemen's revolution, as did military skirmishes between Algeria and Morocco over border issues. Concurrently, Israel has expedited its plans to redirect the Jordan River. The summit established alternative Arab projects against Israeli initiatives, promoted harmony among Arab nations, formed a united Arab military leadership, and laid the foundation for the Palestinian Liberation Organization as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Another noteworthy summit is the 2015 Sharm el-Sheikh Summit, which saw Arab endorsements of the Decisive Storm campaign led by Saudi Arabia and Yemen, which halted Iranian expansion in Yemen. The Mecca Summit in May 2019 was the most recent exceptional Arab gathering addressing Iranian interference. Following attacks on commercial ships in UAE seas and Houthi strikes on Saudi oil pumping sites, the summit reaffirmed Arab cooperation in the face of Iranian operations. It denounced Iran's meddling in Bahrain, its influence on Syria's unity, its annexation of Emirati islands, and its backing for terrorist organizations. Following a gap caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, Arab summits resumed in 2022 with a summit-themed reconciliation in Algeria. Previous negotiations attempted to reinstate Syria's participation in the Arab League, but this was not done at the time. The goal of reconciliation has been moved to the present summit in Jeddah.
Minister of Defense discussed in the interim capital Aden with British military delegation the conditions of the Coast Guard in ports in Aden. His team discussed with the British delegation the most important issues about the nature and tasks of the Yemeni Navy, Coast Guard and ports. The minister talked about the security situation and the importance of supporting the Yemeni Coast Guard and providing it with capabilities. The International Committee of the Red Cross warned in a report that countries experiencing conflicts in the Middle East are among the most vulnerable to climate change. In addition, in the joint report focusing on Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, the organization called for additional assistance, saying that the combined effects of climate change and armed conflicts are exacerbating humanitarian problems in the region. Climate funds listed only 19 projects in Iraq, Yemen, and Syria that was approved for funding. In Marib, expired food products that are not suitable for use have spread in the city's markets as a result of the import of large amounts of close to expired foodstuffs, which has caused health damage to many citizens. They called on government agencies to control violating merchants and tighten control over the commercial movement. This report has more details.
Expired food products and others subject to the standards of deceitful merchants, without any controls and standards that protect the consumer from these products, which were dumped in the city's markets, raising concern and fear among shoppers about the health of their lives, as many citizens were affected by it a few days ago.
We found expired food supplies in some grocery shops, such as beans, peas and candies. We call on the authorities to control the sale of these products. Large quantities of adulterated oil were seized after being repacked locally, and 4,000 packs of beans were collected. We also found expired African honey. The merchants removed the original date and replaced it with a false one. There were large quantities of expired food supplies and candies, which imposes a real threat on children and all citizens.
The spread of spoiled goods and the manipulation of powers to sell them is not the first, and will not be the last by arresting the violators and referring them to the judiciary, in light of the negligence by the competent authorities. Large quantities have already been seized months ago, along with the seizure of food products, oils, canned juices, and other materials that do not comply with the required standards, in addition to materials of unknown origin and dates that are spread in tons in the markets. This raises concerns among citizens, who hold the supervisory authorities and the Health Bureau fully responsible for any consequences that may befall them as a result.
The food supplies in most of the grocery shops are expired due to the long-term storage, as the high prices made citizens unable to buy these products. It's so frustrating. We buy something and after opening it, we discover that it is expired, so we throw it away. We need effective monitoring to prevent this disaster.
Many factors contributed to the spread of these unusable materials, including the import of materials that are about to expire and allowing them to enter from the port and the entrances to the city, with the greed of merchants to double their profits, not to mention the lack of continuous government control over them. In addition to the economic recession resulting from the war, many merchants in the province resorted to searching for other ways. Shoppers are tempted by such reduced prices without taking into account the health disaster that may befall on them.
Yemen, the worst famine the world has seen in 100 years. Right now, over 8 million people are facing starvation. Since the beginning of the war, 85,000 children have died due to the lack of food. We cannot allow this to continue. The Yemeni people can't wait.
Coming next in the news. In Shabwa, historical palace faces the risk of collapse due to government neglect. Welcome back. The Sharif Palace is one of the most prominent historical monuments in Shabwa. The palace is characterized by a unique artistic style, and despite that, it was neglected by the government. This report has more details.
Al Sharif Palace is one of the most notable historical structures in Shabwa Governorate, standing near the eastern gateway of Al Naqoub and Usaylan Directorate. Until it was overthrown by the revolutionaries opposed to the British colonization in September 1967, this structure served as the capital of Al Habiliya Emirate in Bayhan in the 19th century.
مبنى أو قصر الشريف حسين بن أحمد الهبيلي.
This is the Sharif Hussein bin Ahmad al-Habili's palace in Bayhan Shabwa. This palace was constructed long time back. Al-Habili ruled until the Emirates dissolution in 1967.
The palace was structured at the beginning of the 20th century from stone and mud and covered with a layer of white cement, which is called an-Noura, by architects from Al-Bayda Governorate, who were specially hired by the prince to build it in a distinctive design. The palace was ornamented with inscriptions, decorations, paintings, geometric domes and daggers. Each suite of the palace has a collection of rooms that were used as a storage, kitchens and housing for guards and servants. The palace has almost 20 rooms total, 15 of which are on the first floor, in addition to horse stalls.
يضم هذا القصر 35 غرفة.
This palace has 35 rooms, a swimming pool, storage units and housing for the guards, in addition to the stable of the prince's horses. There is also the mosque of Hasna bint Hussein al-Habili. Despite the historical importance of the palace in Shabwa, it was neglected after the fall of al-Habili's rule. We appeal to the authorities and the organizations that are interested in heritage to restore the palace due to its historical significance.
Prior to being subjected to acts of looting in recent years, the palace served as a residence for students of a Shala private school for the children of nomadic Bedouins in the early 1990s. However, the building has since become like a ruin, vacant and neglected. In order to preserve what is left of this historical site with distinctive aesthetic and architectural style, it needs for the government intervention and the support of organizations dedicated to preserving cultural heritage.
The crisis of electricity services in Aden entered its sixth day in a row, following the depletion of fuel for most power generation stations. Local sources confirmed that the electricity crisis in the coastal districts of Aden entered today its sixth day in a row, as the hours of outages exceeded 5 hours compared to 2 hours of power generation. The suffering of citizens led by women and children and patients with diabetes, pressure and chronic diseases was exacerbated as a result of the high temperature in summer. The Minister of Social Affairs discussed with the USAID team support for a number of programs and projects in many sectors. The meeting touched on the agency's support for the activities and events of the National Plan for Yemeni Women, Peace and Security. The minister praised efforts of U.S. agency for supporting the development process in Yemen. The Yemeni Ministry of Interior announced that they stopped an attempt of smuggling of a group of communications equipment in Al-Mahra. The Security Information Center of the Ministry of Interior said that Al-Mahra police seized communication networks containing an electrical power transform. The center indicated that they seized items were transferred to the customs warehouses to take legal action in their regard. A report issued by a cybersecurity company revealed that a hacking group loyal to Al-Houthis is linked to spying operation targeting humanitarian groups. According to the report, a company called Oil Alpha sent Android files through WhatsApp application to political representatives. It confirmed that the spying campaign targeted access to calls, messages, contact, and network information. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Amid major political and economic unrest in the Middle East, Arab Summit opens in Jeddah today. Recent international report stresses need for increasing climate funds for Yemen and other countries. Expired food supply spread in Marib, risking the health of thousands of Yemenis. This is the end of the news. It was Shazad Bilbei. Thank you for watching.